Hey everybody, welcome back to Joe and Toe. I'm Joe, and in today's episode, I'm going to show you how I went from this to this. The other day, my daughter was drawing the eye and was having a hard time and asked for help. So I walked her through the process that I use when I draw an eye, and it seemed to help her out. So I thought, why not share that here? So these are the steps I use when I draw an eye. Now, I didn't use a reference photo for this drawing, and you probably should, so we won't have that in this video, but we do have a material list. However, it's quite short. All you need is a piece of paper and a pencil. So let's get to drawing the eye. So the way I start drawing an eye is typically with a circle. And I like to keep my pencil really, held really loosely and draw very light so that if I have to, I can go back and erase any mistakes or anything like that. So I'm just going to kind of get a feel for a circle that I want to draw. And I'm going to start putting pencil to paper and getting a basic circle shape, right? Okay. One thing you don't want to do is this, is where you got a death grip on your pencil and you're drawing it so dark that it's going to be almost impossible to erase if you have to later on. So don't do that. we have a circle, and what we're going to do now is draw a smaller circle inside of the eye, or the bigger circle, and that's going to represent the iris. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Mine's not quite perfect, but this will be the colored part of the eye. This is what gives you whether you have green eyes, brown eyes, blue eyes, and so forth, right? And then inside that circle, we'll do an even smaller circle, and this will represent your pupil. And that's the black part of your eye that lets light into your eye. Okay, again, doesn't have to be perfect, but something along those lines. Okay, good. So now what I like to do is kind of determine where my eyelid is going to cover the eye. So this is the eyeball that literally sits inside your head, and it's covered with your eyelids, both the top and the bottom. And typically what I'll do is I'll start with a line that kind of goes over the top, just over the top of the eye, like that. And then it'll come down maybe about halfway, somewhere like that. It'll come down to here on this side. And then it'll come down over here to about the same spot, maybe a little higher. And that's your basic shape. It's not going to be an exact oval or almond shape like that. People's eyes don't look like that. They typically will look like kind of I don't know what kind of shape that would be, but it's more of like a line, and a line versus line, right? So I have that. I'm happy with that. Now I'll do the same on the bottom. I'll start at the corner here and I'll come down. And on the bottom line, I keep it very, very light. And I'll tell you why in a little bit. But I just kind of bring it up to meet the other corners of the first two. Okay. Now how much white space between the top of the eyelid and the bottom of the eyelid and the pupil, the iris, will determine how surprised the person looks. So, if you've got an eye that's like this and you got the iris and the pupil in the middle, they're going to be a lot more surprised than somebody who's like this. They look very tired. Bull, I'm tired. So this is a pretty standard, typical. A lot of times you'll see the eye that'll look like you won't see the top part of it. You'll see it like that. And I know I'm drawing very dark, which I told you not to do, but these are just examples. So, all right, now that we've got this kind of overall shape, we can start to add some detail. Now, typically, when somebody's taken a picture of a person, the light from the camera is going to reflect in the eye. And that is typically seen somewhere like in the iris and the pupil. They kind of overlap. So what you can do is just draw a circle, maybe decent sized circle right there. Something like that, right? Okay, and then you can erase that line in the middle. See, just like that. Again, that's why it's so important to keep those lines nice and light until you're close to the end. Okay, so we've got some reflective light there. Now what we'll do is we will give the iris some detail. And I like to think of it almost like the hands of a clock, but not quite as symmetrical. So I'll put a line there. I'll put a line here, and maybe a line here. And what you don't do though is you don't take the line all the way to this center circle. I will then draw another one here, and here, and maybe here, and here. And then what I'm going to do is draw some short lines right next to them. See, just like little short ones, not nearly as long as the other first ones. They're like little baby lines, right? Just like that, okay? And then I'm going to do long one, 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 long one. So something along those lines. It just gives the eye a little bit of detail, and you can add more in there if you want. So if you want to go back in and you can do some, like, really tiny little light lines, that might help look a little more realistic, but I think it looks fine the way it is. So now, if we're happy with the shape, we can start to color this guy in. Well, I'm going to go back really dark now, once I'm happy with the shape of this pupil, and then I'm going to color it in dark, just like that. Okay. We're very careful to leave this part white because that's the light reflecting. And then once we are happy with the outer shape, we can start to darken that up a bit. And you can do it in a couple passes. You don't have to do it all at once, right? So you don't have to hold the pencil super stiff and get that line super solid on the first try. It might take a couple, but once you get the shape of it, you can go back over, and each time you go back over, you can add a little more pressure, maybe really bump up that line. And if you need to, rotate your paper. I do it all the time. It really helps you out. Okay, so now that we've got those darkened up, I'm going to darken up this line for the eyelid. Same kind of principle here applies. It's just a couple of strokes to get that line going. That. Now I'm going to keep this one again, this bottom line. It's going to be very light. And the reason we do that is it kind of starts out to be dark because there's some definition there, but it kind of fades in the middle. And the reason is that is because the light is hitting your eyelid on the bottom, so it kind of almost blends in with the rest of the eye. So to show that in your drawing, you kind of just leave the bottom almost open like that. Okay. Now the eyelid will cast a bit of a shadow on the eye. So what you can do if you'd like is you can draw a very light line that follows the curve of the eyelid. And yes, you go over the iris and back down to the other side. And then you can just lightly, very lightly, just color that in. I'm barely putting any pressure on the pencil. And you can kind of have a shadow. And what I'll do is I'll typically make this shadow go a little bit further down on the eye. Just a little bit. Kind of like this. But again, don't color this white part in here. Okay? So far, so good? So the next thing I'll do is typically add eyelashes. So I'm going to turn my paper, and the eyelashes kind of follow the direction of the eyelid. So what I want to do is kind of just come over here, almost like wind is blowing my pencil, like just like that. So I'm going to kind of just lash out the eyelashes, and they can kind of go up. And now men and women have typically different eyelashes, so if you're drawing a female or a girl, then you're going to have a lot of eyelashes like this. If you're drawing a male, you might have fewer. But that's the general idea. And you don't have to draw every eyelash. You know, you're not gonna, because then that gets that looks weird. Yeah, don't do that either. And then I'm gonna do the same thing on the bottom, but I'm gonna do even fewer, maybe just 1 or 2 lines that they curl away from the eye. You know, something like that. Maybe thicken them up. Just whatever you think looks nice. Okay. And now the crease on the top of the eye, where the eyelid meets the rest of the head, again follows the curve of the eyeball. And then, unless they're really, really tired, they're not going to have, you know, you're not going to have a big bag under your eye like that. But you might have something like, you can just give it a little bit of an indicator that there's a ball in there. And then once you're happy with this, you can go back and erase your original ball that you drew. And you drew it really nice and light, so it's super easy to erase, right? And even if you erase some of your original lines, you can go back and touch them up. It's fine. So looking at this, I think my eyelashes are not quite dark enough, so I'm going to kind of darken them up just by going over them again. Right? And some of these. And maybe get some more shadow in here. And darken this up again. Make sure this is nice and bright. Clean that up. And there you have it. That's essentially how I draw realistic eyes. All right, that was drawing an eye from a circle. I hope you were able to follow along. And if you're not happy with the way your eye turned out, don't get discouraged. Just keep practicing. Draw eyes all the time. And eventually you'll get better, I promise. So there's been a couple of requests to draw an anime eye. And I'm going to do that in one of my upcoming videos. So be sure to keep an eye out for that one. An eye out.